studio was the one room in the house that was entirely Owen's. 6:47 on a Sunday morning. Pale gray light. He sat in the old wooden chair at his editing desk, sorting through the week's landscape photographs while the house slept. Mist over the gorge from Tuesday, a heron lifting off still water. He remembered standing there with his camera, thinking, this is why I do it. The moment right before the world makes noise. His phone lit up on the desk. A text from Diane, his sister. Hey, Stella called me last night, said you're going through a really hard time and she's really worried about you. Everything okay? He read it twice.
I was the one who called Diane.
4 days ago, Tuesday evening, while Stella was at a listing dinner, he'd sat in this chair and told his sister that things had been hard, that he and Stella had been going through a rough stretch.
I called Diane.
And Stella called her first.
He set the phone down, turned back to the monitor. The heron was frozen in mid-lift, wings wide, about to disappear. He sat there for a long time with a feeling in his chest that had no name yet. He'd met Stella 16 years ago at a gallery opening. One of his prints was on the wall, a long exposure of a river at night, water blurred to silk. She'd been standing in front of it for several minutes, more than most people gave anything. He'd asked what she thought.
It makes me feel like time is both slower and faster than I thought it was.
He'd married her 2 years later. That was the version of Stella he'd kept close all these years. The woman who could stand in front of a photograph and say something true about it. The woman who lit up every room, who remembered every waiter's name, every kid's birthday, every detail about every person she'd ever met. She was extraordinary at people. She walked in and the rooms rearranged themselves around her. She made it look effortless. Owen was a photographer. He knew the difference between subjects who were aware of the camera and subjects who weren't. Most people who were magnificent in public were a little exhausted at home. He'd understood that. He'd accepted that.
It took me years to realize what I had actually been accepting.
The first time he noticed the pattern, he didn't know what he was noticing. A dinner party at the Hendersons. Owen had been talking to a man named Paul Finance Kind Eyes about the photography trip to Iceland. Paul was genuinely engaged, asking good questions about shooting in low light, about the challenge of color balance when everything is blue and white. Stella appeared at his elbow. She took his arm the way she always did. A light touch that looked like affection felt like a steering wheel.
There you are. Paul, I'm sorry. I have to steal him. Someone across the room has been dying to meet him all night.
She guided Owen away before Paul had finished his sentence. Owen looked back once. Paul was standing alone. Conversation over. Stella leaned close.
You looked like you were drowning, sweetheart. He was telling you about his kids' soccer games, and I could see it from across the room.
Actually, we were talking about Iceland. I was enjoying it.
Oh, you're always too nice to say you're bored. Come on, the Wentworths are over here.
He went. He filed it away without knowing he was filing it. It happened again at the Whitfields' holiday dinner. Owen was deep in a conversation with their hostess Karen about a Southwest trip he was planning. Utah, the Canyon Country, Canyon Light at different times of day. Karen had hiked parts of it. They were comparing trail notes. He was honestly enjoying himself. He checked the time. 17 minutes had passed. Stella materialized at his side.
I am so sorry, Karen. I need to pull him away for a second. His old friend David is here, and they haven't seen each other in years. You understand.
Owen didn't have an old friend named David. He'd met the man Karen was now talking to once at a work thing of Stella's 3 years ago. He stood with a man named David for 20 minutes and talked about interest rates. On the drive home, Stella was bright, animated, reviewing the evening like a director reviewing dailies.
Good night, right? The Whitfields always do it right. I think Karen was a little bored with you, by the way. You were going on about photography again. I saved you.
Owen looked out the window at the passing streetlights.
I didn't feel bored.
I know, honey, you never do. That's why you have me.
She said it fondly, like it was a compliment.
I watched the streetlights. I didn't say anything else.
He filed that one away too, still without knowing why. What he'd told Diane on Tuesday was true. Things had been hard, but he hadn't told her the hardest part. He hadn't told her about the night 14 months ago when he'd sat Stella down at the kitchen table and said, "I'm not sure I want to stay married. I've been unhappy for a long time and I need you to know that." Stella had cried, really cried, the kind of crying that looked desperate, total. She'd reached across the table and held both his hands and said she didn't know. She had no idea. She was going to do better, she promised. He'd believed her. Things had been better for 6 weeks. Then they'd return to what they were. He'd never brought it up again. He hadn't known what to do with the fact that it had worked, temporarily, and then stopped working.
What kept nagging at me was the difference.
When I told Stella I wanted to leave, she cried.
When I called Diane, Stella reached for the phone.
Those two reactions felt different to him. He just couldn't name why. He made an appointment with Dr. Rafael Navarro 3 weeks after the text from Diane, a name a colleague had mentioned once, almost in passing. Owen had written it in his phone's notes and not looked at it again for 8 months. The office was on the 3rd floor of a brick building near the university. Real bookshelves with real books in them. A window with an alley view. Dr. Navarro was in his 50s. Dark hair going gray. A quality of stillness that reminded Owen of the landscape before the light shifted. Owen sat, put his hands on his knees.
I'm honestly not sure what I'm here about. That's where I'm starting.
That's a fine place to start. Tell me, what made you make the appointment?
My sister got a call from my wife before I got to call my sister back. It sounds like nothing when I say it, but it sat wrong with me for 3 weeks, and I couldn't shake it.
Walk me through it.
Owen walked him through it. The call to Diane, the text, the realization that Stella had called first.
What do you think she was trying to do when she called your sister?
Give her a version of things before I could give her mine.
And when your sister heard that version first, what happened when you eventually connected?
She was already positioned. She was responding to a version of me that needed care and concern, not the version of me who had just told his sister something real about his marriage. The conversation I'd planned to have never happened. She was already in a different conversation.
How did that feel? Like I'd reached for something and someone had quietly moved it.
Tell me, when you told Stella you were thinking about leaving, what was her response?
She cried. She promised things would change.
And when you told your sister you were struggling?
She called her? She moved.
2 very different responses to 2 very different threats.
Owen was quiet.
I've been thinking about that. The night I told Stella I might leave, there were only 2 of us in the room. She could manage that with tears. But when I talked to Diane...
Diane has ears. Diane talks to other people.
Yes.
Think of it like exposure settings on a camera, Owen. The narcissist controls what gets exposed and what stays in shadow. Your sister got a glimpse of the real image. That triggered something immediate.
Owen stared at him.
That's a very specific choice of metaphor for someone who just found out I'm a photographer.
I did some reading before our session.
Owen almost smiled. Almost.
What is she controlling? The image of us?
The image of her. You're part of it. But it's her image she's protecting.
Owen sat with that.
She's afraid of what I might say. More specifically, she's afraid of what people might hear and believe.
He went home that afternoon and photographed the back garden in the late light. Stella was at an open house. He had the house to himself for 3 hours. He photographed the same corner 12 ways. How the same thing changed completely depending on where you stood. He thought about his old college friend Marcus, who'd had lunch with them twice and always seemed oddly careful around Owen afterward. He thought about his coworker Jeff, who'd mentioned once that Stella had told him Owen was not really a social person. You know, brilliant in his own world, which Owen had never said about himself.
I started to see the edges of something.
Not the shape, just the edges.
He was still thinking about it when Stella came home at 7:15.
You made pasta. You're the best.
She kissed his cheek, poured herself wine, started talking about the open house, the listing she'd staged, the offer that had come in, the client she talked down from a panic because that was Stella always keeping everyone steady. She talked for 45 minutes. Owen listened, nodded, passed the bread. At the end of dinner, she looked at him across the table with warm eyes.
You're quiet tonight, sweetheart. Everything okay?
I'm fine. Just thinking about a project.
Good. You always work things out best in your head, don't you? That's my introverted genius.
She said it lovingly, like a fact. He looked at her. Devoted. Just a wife checking in on her husband.
I looked for the seam, the place where the warmth stopped being warm.
I couldn't find it.
That, he was beginning to understand, was exactly the point. Second session with Dr. Navarro. 2 weeks later, Owen came with something to say.
I've been tracking it, not formally, just in my head. Every time I've said something to someone outside of us, to Marcus, to Jeff, to Diane, she was there first, or she's already spoken to them, or they seem oriented toward a particular version of me before I can say anything.
Oriented how? Like she's already done the stage design before the actors arrive.
That's a precise way to put it.
I'm also thinking about the night I told her I wanted to leave, versus what happened when I talked to Diane. In the first situation, she cried. Big emotion. Promises. Everything changed for 6 weeks. In the second, she made a phone call. Not a crying phone call. A quiet, strategic one. Those feel like completely different kinds of reactions to me.
Let's sit with that difference. When you threatened to leave, who was affected by her reaction?
Just me. The two of us in a room.
And when you talked to your sister?
Potentially everyone. Anyone who would hear from Diane. Anyone in our shared world.
So when the threat was private, between the two of you, she managed it with emotion.
Which worked. Worked on me.
And when the threat was potentially public, that someone outside might hear a different version of the marriage.
She managed it with action.
What does that tell you about what she feared more?
Owen was quiet for a long moment. He turned something over in his mind carefully, like a photograph before he committed to printing it.
She wasn't afraid of losing me.
Go on.
She was afraid I'd tell people the truth.
Dr. Navarro let the sentence sit in the room.
You just named something that takes most people years to get to.
Owen felt something loosen in his chest. Not relief yet. The specific feeling that comes when a shape you've been trying to see finally clarifies, even when what it shows you is difficult.
So the tears, the 6 weeks, the promises.
Were a response to a private threat, a manageable one. If you leave, she controls the story about why.
But if I talk...
She loses control of the story itself.
Owen looked at the bookshelf. At the alley window.
It was never about losing me. There's something Jung wrote about that I think explains what you're living. He called it the persona, the social mask that we construct. Most of us wear a persona and know it's a mask. We know there's a person underneath. But for some people, the mask and the self become indistinguishable. The persona isn't something they wear. It is them. And what they fear most isn't losing a particular person. It's the mask being seen through.
That's what Stella is. The image.
Kohut, who studied narcissistic psychology, described what he called the narcissistic injury, the original wound. A deep, early conviction that the self as it actually exists isn't enough, not good enough, not lovable as it is, so the person builds something better. A constructed self, brilliant, charming, beloved. And that construction is fragile, not because it looks weak, but because there's nothing underneath it. When it collapses, there's no foundation, just the wound it was built to cover.
So abandonment is painful. But she survives abandonment. She finds someone else. She tells a story about why I left.
And exposure.
If people hear the real version, the image doesn't work anymore. Not with them.
Abandonment is losing the photographer. Exposure is losing control of the image. For someone whose entire identity is the image, those aren't equal threats. One is painful, the other is existential.
Owen exhaled slowly. He thought of Stella at the gallery 16 years ago, standing in front of his photograph, saying, "It makes me feel like time is both slower and faster than I thought it was."
I wondered if she'd said it because she meant it, or because she'd known it was exactly the right thing to say. I might never know.
So it was never really about me.
It was always about the story she needed people to believe.
Owen sat with that for a long moment. The simplicity of it, the devastation of it.
And I was part of the story. The quiet genius who let her do all the talking.
You were proof that the story was true. A photographer husband who chose her, who continues to choose her, that confirms everything she's built. But a photographer husband who starts talking to his sister about the marriage.
He becomes a liability.
He becomes the one thing she can't control.
He went back to the archive that week. Thousands of photographs of Stella. Every year of their marriage, various lights, various moods. He sorted them chronologically and looked at them all at once, which he had never done before. He noticed something he couldn't unsee in every photograph taken in public. Parties, events, dinners, gallery openings. Stella faced the camera, even in candid shots. Her body language always open, her expression always composed, always slightly radiant. In every photograph taken at home, early mornings, quiet Saturdays, the kitchen in winter light, she was angled slightly away, never fully turned, just a preference for the edge of the frame rather than the center.
I sat with hundreds of photographs on the monitor and felt something settle over me. Something quiet and devastating. The camera had always known.
I'd spent 20 years photographing my wife and never seen what my camera had been recording all along.
In public, she performed. In private, she receded. Third session with Dr. Navarro. Owen described the archive. The pattern?
What did it feel like to see it?
Like developing a photograph and discovering the image was never what you thought it was. Like 20 years of documentation had been sitting there, and I'd never looked at the whole roll at once.
Are you keeping the journal I suggested?
Yes. Every incident I can remember. Dates, times, what was said, what happened next. The dinner parties where she ended my conversations. The things she'd apparently told Marcus and Jeff before I could say anything myself. The night she called Diane.
What does the journal tell you?
That every time someone outside our marriage could potentially hear something true about it, she moved first, every single time.
Annie Reich, a psychoanalyst who studied narcissistic structures, wrote about what she called narcissistic rage, but she was specific about its source. It's not frustration, it's not rejection, it's shame. The gap between the image and the reality becoming visible. And when someone threatens to make that gap visible to the people who believe the image, the response is immediate, preemptive.
The smear campaign, making sure no one will believe me. If you start talking, really talking, what does she need to do first? Make sure people are already skeptical of what I say. Make sure I'm the troubled one, the difficult one, the one she's been so worried about.
So that when your version appears, it fits a frame she's already built.
Owen thought of Diane's text. She's really worried about you, Owen. Diane, already repositioned. Already inside Stella's frame. Not because she'd done anything wrong. She just answered the phone. Just been kind. That was how it worked. The flying monkeys never knew they were flying.
The best path forward is usually consistency, not confrontation. You tell your own story, quietly, repeatedly. You let people hold two versions of events and trust their own judgment.
My approach to photography is that the image has to stand on its own. You can't control how someone reads it. You can only make sure it's honest.
Then you already understand the strategy.
You're telling me to document, to build a record.
I'm telling you that you have resources most people in your situation don't have. A trained eye, a habit of observation, a decade of clear, specific memories, and now, a journal.
Owen stood to go, put on his coat. At the door, he paused.
Thank you for helping me see it.
You saw it, Owen. I just helped you develop the photograph.
He walked out into the November afternoon. He called Diane that weekend. Saturday morning, Stella was at an open house. Diane picked up on the second ring. Hey, I've been thinking about you.
We never actually had the conversation I called to have 4 weeks ago.
Pause. Then, I know, I got wrapped up in Stella's call. I think I assumed she told me the important parts.
She told you her parts. I want to tell you mine.
He told her the truth. Not everything. Not the journal, not the sessions, not the archive, but the core of it. What the marriage actually felt like from inside. How it had felt to reach out to his sister and find someone had already set the frame before he arrived. Diane listened. He heard her shift. The small sounds that meant she was actually taking it in. Owen, she said finally. I'm really sorry. I think I missed the whole thing.
It's not your fault. She's very good.
Is she bad? Like, is this bad? Owen was quiet for a moment.
I think she's doing what she knows how to do, and I don't think she can see the shape of it. I couldn't for 10 years.
What are you going to do? He looked at the heron photograph he'd printed and pinned above the desk. Wings wide. Moment of lift.
I'm going to be careful. And then I'm going to be honest. In that order.
Call me more, Diane said. Actually, not every few months. Call me like a person. He said I will. He meant it. Things were the same after that and completely different. Stella was still brilliant in every room, still remembered every name, managed every impression, moved through their social life with the ease of someone who had been practicing their whole life. She came home from a client dinner in November and found Owen reading in the studio.
There you are. I was worried. You didn't answer my text.
Phone was off. I was in the middle of editing.
You work too hard, you know that? Come watch something with me.
He came. He sat beside her on the couch. She tucked against him the way she always had.
I sat very still and thought, she's genuinely warm right now. Or she's performing warmth, or those two things have become indistinguishable.
I didn't know which it was. I was starting to think it might not matter.
Can I ask you something?
Sure.
Are you okay? Lately you seem somewhere else.
He looked at her. She looked genuinely concerned or genuinely worried that he'd say something she couldn't control. He couldn't tell the difference.
Maybe she couldn't.
I'm okay. Just thinking through some things.
You know you can talk to me. Whatever it is.
I know.
I just want you to be happy. You know that, right? That's all I've ever wanted.
He looked at her face. Open, sincere.
I thought, maybe she believes it. Maybe the wanting is real, even if everything built around it is constructed.
He said, I know, Stella. He turned on the TV. He sat beside her and watched the screen and filed the conversation in the journal later that night. Time, what was said, how it felt. The frame as he had said it. Honest his. Seven Dai Cole's goddaughters was the, up to my known, set Emmy the way our father. If I should, you spend hours setting up a shot, waiting for the right light, the right angle. You think you know what you're going to capture. You take the photograph, and when you develop it, you find the image is nothing like what you planned. It's more honest. It shows you something you didn't know you were looking for. Owen had spent 10 years inside a photograph he thought he understood. He thought it was a portrait of a marriage. Two people. A life built together. What he found when he finally developed it. When he looked at the whole archive at once. When he sat in Dr. Navarro's office and let the pattern become legible, was a different kind of image entirely. A picture of a woman who was afraid, not of losing him, not of abandonment, of being seen, of the gap between the image she'd built and whatever existed beneath it becoming visible to the people whose belief in the image was what made it real.
She wasn't afraid of losing me.
She was afraid I'd tell people the truth.
And the thing about understanding that, really understanding it, in the chest, not just in the mind, was that it gave him something he hadn't expected. Power. Not the aggressive kind, not the confrontation kind, the quiet kind, The kind that comes from knowing what you are actually looking at. The kind a photographer has when he finally understands the light. He sat in the studio one morning in January, 7-Eleven on a Sunday, coffee hot, house quiet. He opened the journal, not to write anything new, just to read the record. Dates, times, specific incidents. The account of a man who had learned to trust his own observation. He closed the journal, set it on the desk beside the camera. Outside the studio window, the winter light was just beginning to change. He put on his coat, picked up the camera, and stepped out into the pale morning. For the first time in years, the hour felt entirely his. The kind of his that didn't need anyone's permission to be true.